Hey there, and welcome to your C++ tutorial on switch statements with enums. As you can see, I have Visual Studio Code pulled up here, and I have the program from our last example on switch statements with integers. So previously, we kind of coded this program that handles these possible response codes, and these response codes were represented by an integer. So, 200, 400, etc. Now, that's great, but there's always, and that's probably a very suitable way to do this, honestly. There's always the possibility, though, that you'll get something you're not expecting. If you're using an enum, that kind of eliminates that possibility. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to create an enum here. And so an enum is essentially a list of potential values for something. And it's a fixed list that you create. And let's say I want to represent our potential values over here, but I want to represent it as OK, bad request, not found, and server error. That should say server error. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to call this enum response codes, or just response code, we'll say. So we're going to get into collections and lists and enums later on in this course. But because of how well they can be used with switch statements, I thought I would mention them now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of our response code. And we are going to create a new response code of the type of the enum. Okay, so we just created this enum, and we can now create a variable of that type. And if this is confusing at all, we're going to cover this later. So we're just going to call this response, and we're going to set it equal to bad request. Now what we can do is we can pass this enum called response into our switch statement. Now, this isn't going to work as it is because our cases, as you might have noticed, are still integers. But what we can do is we can switch our case statements to be the enum, the values in the enum. So we can do OK, we can do bad request, we can do not found, and we can do server error. So now we get to our default case. So we actually don't need our default case, so I can delete it there. We don't need it because there's only so many possible values of the enum, right? So we don't have, in our previous example, we had an issue where we could have gotten any response from the server. In this situation, we can only get these 4 responses. So we don't need that default case because there's no possibility for that default case being triggered. Okay, cool. So let's compile this and see how it goes. We have we need a semicolon. Let's try it here. All right, so we've compiled it fine. We'll run this, and we see that was a bad request. So initially, you need to put a semicolon after the enum. It just slipped my mind there. So what's happening here in this program that results in the bad request is that we are creating our enum. We have all of our potential values here. We create a variable of the type of our enum that we just created, and we assign it one of our possible values. If you have a variable that's the type of your enum, it can't have a value that's not in this list of values, right? The enum, the whole point of it is it's just those possible values. And enums do get a little bit deeper than this, but this is sort of just an overview of enums. We're just learning them enough to understand switch statements better. So we have our response variable. We move down to our switch statement. We pass our response enum into our switch statement, and then we start to check all of our cases. So we check all 4 cases for a match to one of these values. In this case, it was bad request. And so we printed out that was a bad request at the bottom here. So I just wanted to mention this. I know we already did one video on switch statements and integers, but the enum class is so powerful when used with the switch statement that I thought it was worth mentioning here, even though we haven't covered enums in depth yet. So I hope this helps. I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed it. Thanks.